Hello and welcome to the 22nd episode of When Life Hands You Lemons. I'm so excited to share this episode with you because it's with one of my favorite up-and-coming, or I guess you could say somewhat established artists already, Varien. His real name is Nikki Kaelar, but he goes by Varien. He also produced under the alias Halo Nova. And I've been a fan of his since his Monstercat days when I first started discovering his music on Monstercat. And he's composed electronic music, he's done orchestral music, he's done trailer music, he's done pretty much every genre under the sun. However, his most notable pieces can be found in movies like The Fast and Furious, 300, The Purge, Anarchy, and TV shows like The Walking Dead. Additionally, he composed, produced, and arranged the lead single off of Vix's album, Scientist. So with this amazing talent and production experience under his belt, I couldn't help but have him on the show. He also resides in Florida, and he comes back and forth between where I live quite often. So we arranged a little meetup, and we sat down and we had an amazing conversation. He talked a little bit about everything, where he got his inspiration. He talks Japanese. He speaks Japanese fluently, so I kind of put him on the spot for that. He also tells us a little bit about his hiatus and kind of why he kind of disappeared. He had to take care of himself for a little bit, kind of refocus himself, and now he's come back and he's ready to go full force. So I don't want to give too much information away. As always, I like to leave that up to the guest, and in this one, it's Nick. So I will let him tell the story. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with the incredibly talented, and in my opinion, somewhat of a savant, Mr. Nikki Kaelar, also known as Varien.
My name's Nick, and I produce under the name Varien, but I also do back-end work under my actual name. I started off doing music when I was 11, playing guitar, and then one hand playing the notes wasn't enough, so then I got into two hands playing the notes, which was piano. When I started piano, I started learning music theory, and then in high school, I was classically trained in jazz by a teacher who saw that I was hungry. Like, oh my God, like what are these crazy chords? Like, oh my God, I thought, music was just major and minor chords, but we were playing bizarre stuff for a high school band. And so then two hands wasn't enough because I was still playing in bands, and if the bass player didn't show up because his girlfriend threw a fit, then we couldn't make music. And that was the annoying part to me was I came here to make music. You feel? So it's if we can't, then I'm going to leave mad because I have all these ideas and I can't get them out. So then I started producing, having full control over the idea. I started off remixing pop songs into trance and house. This was before EDM really popped off. So we're talking 2009 is when I really started producing and putting stuff together and just trying stuff out. And then it just got serious. All of a sudden I tried my hand at dubstep, and a local Tampa record label at the time picked me up for an EP, and I started producing under the name Halo Nova. Skip forward to me talking with this guy named Mike Darlington in a Skype call, talking about maybe creating a label called Velocilobster or Monstercat. Those were the two options. He obviously chose Monstercat.
The latter.
And launch week, I was there. I think I was the third release ever on Monstercat.
Wow.
Yeah. And went on to change after just two releases as Halo Nova on Monstercat because I realized, hey, I'm making money. This is becoming serious. This is what I've been working for. So I'm going to rebrand. I'm going to come with a new name. We're going to push this hard. And the new name is going to be based off of this book that taught me a lot about, it's kind of cheesy, but it's about this guy who sacrifices himself. He's like the king of dragons. and he sacrifices himself to become human to help the humans win the war against the evil wizard, kind of thing. It's kind of a hokey book, but it meant a lot to me at the time. And his name as in human form was Nikki Kaelar, and so that's why I also changed my name to Nicholas Varien Kaelar. Is I have a very strong connection to those words, and then I thought Varien was just a really cool name, and just been rolling with that. I've done everything from Hollywood stuff, trailers. I worked on movies like Furious 7. I've worked on stuff like Walking Dead. Dipped my hand in K-pop a few times. Still doing a lot of that. I've had my debut album debuted at #1 iTunes Electronic on Monstercat, and then I took a hiatus. Personal life got a little bit hairy, so then last year I sort of came back from zero on social media, on everything, and it's just kind of been a rebuilding phase, but with like a different intention moving forward. Because people often say Varien's back, or Varien, like they expect me to go back to where I was, but I'm in the business of moving forward with ideas because it's 2019 now. It's no longer 2014. Why would I do 2014 stuff? So here we are, 2019, and I've been cooking up some pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, and I've been a fan since your Monstercat stuff came out, and that's how I became a fan of Monstercat. Is I really kind of indulged into that whole thing, and now they've immersed into this huge, highly respectable label. Mm-hmm. So congrats on all of that.
Thank you.
And you've done a little bit of everything. You've
Yeah.
done trailers. You've done all this stuff. You even had that credit on the K-pop with, was it BTS?
VIX, and then
VIX.
there's another one that any day now will be confirmed.
Okay.
It's bigger than VIX. But
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool. So you got into all this music stuff. Did you come from kind of a musical family?
I mean, music was always around. My brother got me into metal and rap, which is still like two of my biggest favorites. I mean, video game music kind of taught me everything. If I can rewind a little bit, is like, I grew up on video games. My first memories ever was playing Final Fantasy IV on Super Nintendo and Super Mario World and stuff like that. And in these more like RPG type games, in the early games, to really convey atmosphere, which is what a lot of my music is known for. Well, thank video games for that, because if you go into town, there's going to be like a folk song or like a down, tempo kind of relaxed ambient vibe. If you go into the Crystal Caves, it's going to have some, more trancy kind of vibes. If you are playing a game like Mega Man X, that was my introduction to metal. Was listening, because when I first heard Dream Theater, which is still one of my favorite bands, I just don't care for anything after 2004. The first time I heard Dream Theater, I was like, this is like Mega Man X, but real people. That's so cool. I mean, I have video games to thank for like really expanding my mind into all types of music. Obviously there's tons of orchestral music, and even on Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64 sound chips, you were still able to hear these different genres. So hearing them in game and then having like real life tethers to actual artists, it wasn't hard for me to get into everything. And so my mom was weirdly into this like new age stuff, like people like Enigma, and of course the Honorable Queen Enya, who I still love very much. So I got a little bit of that like early on implanted, and then I had my brother, who was always interested, like, check out this is called metal, and this is Pantera, and I'm like, whoa. At that time I had only been
really
listening.
Heavy stuff.
Yeah, and I was like only listening to rock at that time. So to hear Pantera and Slayer, and then to go on and find like actual death metal, and being from Tampa, which is where death metal was essentially founded, was an amazing journey, and I'm still a metalhead to this day, above all, besides a video game person. And then my dad got me into the more progressive side of things, he was really into like the Moody Blues and Rush and stuff like that. So if you just kind of put all of the stuff that I was surrounded with, it just creates this interest in music as a concept, rather than like, oh yeah, I grew up on hip hop, or I grew up on pop. It's like, no, I grew up on literally everything. R&B. My sister was heavily into R&B, so I got that dose. So I surprised a lot of people in high school because I was always this goth scene kid, but I could hang out with any crew and talk shop about music. And this was like 2006, 2004 when I was in high school. So for a goth scene kid to go hang out with like the people who listen to rap and kick it with them, it was like super cliquey, but it was cool. Yeah, I think it's a lot more. People are much more interested in listening to any type of vibe these days. It was a lot different 10 years ago. I don't think people remember. It was very cliquey.
Yeah, it was. I remember my middle school, high school days.
How old are you?
23.
Okay, I'm 28.
Okay,
going on 29.
Okay,
so
so we're not too far apart.
Not too far apart, but you're on the cusp.
Kind of the cusp, yeah.
You're right on the cusp of the whole Generation Z millennial thing. I'm definitely like right in the middle of the millennials.
Yeah.
And school, for anyone who's listening, in 2004 to 2008 was clicky. It was exactly like the Disney original movie portrayed it. It was exactly like that, but I made it fun because I just made friends with everyone. And that's just the kind of person I am anyways.
That's kind of how I was in high school. Like, I would hang out with anybody, but if somebody kind of rubbed me the wrong way or said something really stupid or that I didn't agree with, I'd be like, okay, next.
Oh, yeah.
Like, as Ariana Grande says, thank you, next.
Yeah.
It's like, kind of like, I don't have time for that.
Yeah. I think thank you, next is in the Bible, too.
That's interesting. I wonder if it is.
The sentiment, maybe.
Yes, true. So you said you play instruments. Piano.
10 instruments.
Wow.
Yes, I just picked up violin recently.
Now I want to pick up a violin.
Oof. Yeah.
Is it hard?
It is the hardest instrument that I've ever had to learn.
Really? Mm-hmm. So what are the 10 that you do know?
Off the top of my head.
If you were thrown into an orchestra or band, you could pick it up and go?
You just got to show me where middle C is on any instrument and just like throw me in a room for an hour with middle C and the theory and like, brass instruments would be hard because there's a certain way that you have to, blow air to get a note going. Violin has been hard because it's not just about diving right into a string instrument. It's not like when I picked up sitar and it was like, it's like guitar, but you drone. There's like a drone set of strings at the bottom. Or it wasn't like ukulele or mandolin, where these are all basically the same thing. However, violin is crazy, not only with like learning how to bow properly, but also fretting properly, sliding properly against, holding it properly. It's so prim and proper, and I'm dying to get a decent sound out of it because I've fallen heavily in love with it over the past year. Been listening to a lot of soundtracks and playing a lot of games where solo violin has been like the anchor, and therefore it's just drilled into my head as the most beautiful possible instrument. I think for a lot of people, actually, if you listen to solo violin and it's got the right vibrato and the intonation's perfect, it'll make you tear up.
It does.
Oh yeah, there's something about it so expressive.
100% my favorite instrument. I'm a piano player, so I'm a little bit biased. Yeah, but violin, absolutely, because it's so expressive. You can get expressive with piano as well, but not...
You can get expressive insofar as velocity and techniques and stuff like that. There's even overtone techniques that I've learned recently on actual upright pianos and baby grand pianos that you can achieve an overtone series. Thank you, Jacob Collier. But violin is undoubtedly, besides cello, which it's basically the same idea, just different octaves.
Much bigger.
Different octaves. Mm-hmm. It's just so expressive with how much you can, bend the strings and sliding around. It's just unreal. But it's so hard. So it's almost yes, it's the most expressive instrument in the world, but you have to earn it. Mm-hmm. So
Yeah, it's definitely a craft. And when I was going to school, I was asking one of my instructors or lab instructors, and I was like, "Hey, I'm interested in like learning violin, but they can be really expensive. Like there's one at like Sam Ash or one of the music stores around here for like 600 or 700 bucks. I'm like, is that worth it? And they're like, don't even bother because they sound so cheap and they're not built very well. You've got to spend at least $1,200 to $1,500 to get kind of an entry level.
That's correct. And I kind of lucked out. I got an actually decent sounding one off of Let Go.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just some lady who's like, it's my son's violin. And I was like, all right, I'll take it. And it sounds great. Like when I can get the intonation right, I'm like, that sounds good. But then when I start fretting it like a guitar, I'm like, oh God, I sound like such a noob. So yeah, I'm trying to figure that one out. But I mean, you asked me about instruments. It's just like, you know, I love playing the drums. That's one of my favorite things to just jam on because you don't need. There's no tonality. I just need to know the BPM and like where we're going, and that can jam on anything. Then you got like, of course, bass guitar, regular guitar. I like to play fingerstyle on acoustic. You've got sitar. So all the tars, all the R's.
All the tars.
Just various like hand instruments. Let's see, like a flute I can swing. Anything like Irish tin whistles. I just have like a bunch of little things that I like to record these days instead of hiring someone or trying to do a virtual instrument. It's like I'd rather spend $100 on a good like set of, you know, recorders and whistles than like spend like $600 on a virtual version of it that you can play it, you can program it, but it's going to sound fake. So I'd rather just like learn it and make it sound real.
Record it in yourself.
That's what I've been doing a lot of these days. A lot of recording happening this
Which
year.
kind of turns me into my next question was you, I'm assuming you know all these instruments, so you have to implement them into your productions.
Yeah.
Like, because you've done cinematic stuff, you've done orchestral stuff, then you do like hardcore, deep, dark kind of electronic music, 4 on the floor stuff. Like your Claws, I really liked. Like I was really listening to that production when it came out, and you really did something different with the percussion and the space. And it was
Negative Space.
Negative Space.
That's my favorite.
And then the release before then was Bass Hunter, or the
are you talking about Blood Hunter?
Yes.
Yeah, which
that
is more
one
like
slapped.
industrial.
That one slapped.
Yeah,
I love that song.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
I love that kind of music, very industrial.
Yeah,
dark.
no, that's my favorite too. And I'm doing some, I'm not going to spoil too much, but I'm doing a lot of stuff like in that vein, but taking it to the next evolution.
So in your productions, what are some of the things that you kind of go to? Do you have a specific plugins that you go to? Or are there some things, elements you have to do?
Right.
Or?
I mean, if you asked me this 2 weeks ago, you would have gotten a different answer. And that's because at the time of this recording, my computer, like just last week, well, the week before that, I had a major power surge. The surge protector did not protect against it. And it fried everything in my computer, man. Even like the CPU and the motherboard were like had burn marks and bent pins. It was like a $1,600 repair bill, and then in order for the main drive got corrupted too. I had an online backup service. I got the external sent to me with all my files, and it didn't have any of my project files. And so I looked it up, and I was asking them what the hell's up. And in their terms of service, it says like, we do not guarantee that the files that you flag for backup are going to be backed up. And I'm like, I understand that you need to do that legally just in case you accidentally don't back up this one guy's thing and then he sues your company. But holy crap, I think more people should know about that part. So I recently switched companies, but this company, since I tweeted about it and I put a Facebook and started tagging them, this company swooped right in, and they were really nice and let me know straight ahead, here's the directories we don't back up just because we can't actually do it. And I was like, thank you. Now but my system now is ready for another 5 years of hardcore work. Best CPU on the market, best everything on the market. My samples are intact, my sample libraries are intact, no project files, no plugins. So at first I kind of like, took the punch. I took the hit on that. But then I started to realize, because a lot of bigger producers were hitting me up with like similar stories. I got like I will never lose a file ever again, because I have it set so that every 5 minutes when I'm working on something, it automatically saves the project file. And my project file folder is in 3 different places. Like there's shortcuts. So like, for instance, it's mainly in Dropbox. So when I save, it goes to Dropbox. But then it also goes here and there. And then it goes onto an external that I'll be updating every Sunday kind of thing. It's going to become a ritual for me to just keep updating. But dude, honestly, having to re-download every plugin, and I ended up just like upgrading and switching plugins. So I had to recreate a lot of the stuff I was working on, unfortunately, since December. Like I had a huge demo box, but I still maintain that it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I guarantee you that. And if there's anyone listening who's, had similar things, maybe they feel the same way, because it gives you such a clean slate. And since you're working with all new plugins and whatnot, it's like I can do anything. And so I've been creating stuff that I've never heard, and people have never heard me do before. And it's a pretty, there's like a lot of excitement in the air. Everyone thought I would be super down after taking so many hits. Your computer's down, your car battery died too, and your wallet got stolen all in the same week. Oh, and by the way, we can't recover any of your files. So there's like 4 main punches. But I just breathed and I said, I think I'm being tested right now, and that's okay. And of course it hurt, but I got back up and took a positive attitude about it and hit the ground running on, just this past Monday, and just been doing a song a day. Yeah, I wrote a song in 3 hours on Monday. I'm like a whirlwind of inspiration right now when it comes to creating.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So it, like from start to finish, it's like ready to go? First
note to final master, it's ready to go.
Wow.
And then yesterday...
In 3 hours.
And yesterday, I did Death Asked a Question in 3 hours as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Sometimes I just like, when something's like purely electronic, I just get in this flow where I just don't doubt any single click. Every click has an intention. Every click is like, this is exactly what I want to do. And I don't question it, man. Like, if I'm recording like a piano riff or whatever, and then I quantize it so it fits, it's like, first take is it. No, just keep going. It's like a overall philosophy for me. Just keep going.
So you don't spend a lot of time on the details and making sure it's this and that?
I work on the details and the mix as I'm doing everything. Like, if there's a small detail work that needs to be done, it's either done like right at the very end or as I have the idea. Like if I'm working in bars 32 to 64 and there's a lot of detail work that needs to be done, maybe I'll plant some seeds to come back to, like, hey, remember you were going to do this, But for the most part, I leave mixing and those sort of decisions like in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it so that when you get to the final, it's like your track is pretty much mixed already, and a lot of the detail work, you've either done it or you've planted the seeds where you just have to go back and just like complete the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes things go by so fast. And just writing songs since I was 11, man. A lot of people are like, how do you do it? Well, write songs for 13 years. Not even. Jesus, I'm older than that. Oh my God. Yeah, I've been writing songs since, I was 11 to 14 kind of thing. So I'm turning 29 this year. Do the math. That's how long I've just been every day. Just wake up, write a melody every day, voice memo, something.
Wow.
You don't run out of ideas.
No, you don't. And
especially like when you listen to so much stuff, you'll hear something here and you'll be able to put it here. And that's why people are like, how do you come up with such original ideas? I'm like, it's not original if I explain to you exactly where this idea came from, mixed with this idea, mixed with that idea. It's not as original as you think it is. It's the culmination of all those influences coming together that makes it original.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I really try to tell people when they're like, well, how do I find my sound? I'm like, what are you into? Name like 3 things and then just like put them together. And it's like, it's as easy as that. You don't need to go to a seminar. You don't need to do anything. Just
write.
Just write. And just get in the habit of writing and finishing things.
Mm-hmm.
It really is habit and discipline.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also thinking smart.
What is the kind of the first thing you do when you start a production, when you open up? What you use FL Studio, right?
Right.
So what's the first thing you do when you see that blank project? Do you start with a melody? Do you start picking out samples? Do you start picking out instruments? What do you kind of do to kind of start and get inspired throughout the project?
It depends. It depends on like what genre it is, because if it's going to be electronic, then I want, the grooves to be there and I want things to glue together. I mean, a good mix is gluing things together, but if it's electronic, I want these ideas to come together sooner than later, so I have an idea of the bigger picture. So if I'm working on something electronic or mainly anything besides like orchestral, I'll usually start with like the chorus or the drop first, get all the ideas, and then start stripping away backwards into an intro so that it still sounds like, it came from the drop. It's leading to the drop. It's all one idea. With orchestral, I write left to right, unless something is on the screen and needs to be, on beat, on cue kind of thing. But if it's for video games or whatever, it can be just atmospheric, and I just write left to right. And then if there's a cool motif, just make sure to like repeat it kind of thing. So,
mm-hmm. And for those motifs, how do you keep them so they're not super repetitive? Like, do you use different like blending methods, reverb, delays, things like that?
Well, with motifs that are notational, I mean, what you want to do is you want to come up with like 1 or 2, and then you want to come up with variations of those, and then you want to come up with counter melodies for them, and that's how you keep them fresh. Is that you buddy them up and you mix and match. But people don't even realize that, there's like a rhythmic pattern or a notation pattern happening.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but it is, but they don't realize it.
I know, but
they're like, I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually a deviation of this.
I know.
It's crazy.
It's like magic.
It really is. It really kind of is. When you're done writing your music, you do all the mixing, mastering, everything yourself.
That's correct.
Yeah. Is there like a kind of a go-to? Like I know a lot of people, like for me even, I like to get into people's like mixes. Mm-hmm. Is there anything crazy that you do, or do you just
subtractive EQ?
Subtractive EQ.
Basically, I just try to make everything net zero. So if I'm bumping up frequencies somewhere, I know that I'm going to have to subtract the exact same amount in that frequency range from something. Mm-hmm. Just low cuts on everything except for the sub and maybe the thud of like a kick drum or a taiko or whatever instrument you're using. I am mostly a composing, like notational based person. Production wise, I just don't think too much about it. I just try to listen for what sounds good. And then I know that there's a lot of people out there who get really into like the audiology of it. And sure, there's some stuff that I know that's audiology based, but I don't really think about it. I just kind of, even music theory these days, I don't really think about it. I only do when I'm like stuck on like what chord works here because I can't seem to find one. What's not working melodically?
Come back to basics and think like, it would be a major seventh or this inversion.
Right. You just got to like, that's when I think about it, because people are like, well, when you learn music theory, it ruins, writing music. No, it doesn't. It makes it way easier. The thing is that when you meet the people who only care about music theory, it's like the people who collect synths, and it's like, let's hear your music, and it's like, beep, boop, and it's like, of course, you didn't actually like put anything to the test. You just like went full academic, or you went full like collector mode before actually making anything. It's like, I think everyone should start off making things with only chiptune sounds. write songs using only chiptune and then branch out, like that's like a little pro tip that I've actually used before. Is like when I'm writing a complex sort of thing, if I can write it out using like sort of like chiptune sounds, and which is basically just the most stripped down, since you're just working with sine waves, saw, and white noise and stuff like that.
Square waves. Yeah.
Yep, square waves. If you could just write a song and it works like that, once you translate it to actual instruments, it's going to sound really good. So that's like one thing that I do from time to time.
I think that translates to a lot of things too. Like, I've talked about this with previous guests, and they think, a lot of beginners, they think that they need this expensive board, they need this really expensive microphone, they need to buy these crazy sample packs with thousands and thousands, which they're going for quantity over quality.
Right.
So it's not true. If you can make do with the default samples in FL Studio, then you can sure as hell make do with...
Well, it's just like learn to write before you start buying everything. I mean, like if you weren't sure if you wanted to learn how to cook kind of thing, why would you go out and buy like the entire grocery store and deck out your kitchen with everything and then stand there and be like, and now what? It's like, learn to make a grilled cheese first, or a pancake.
Piece of toast.
Just start with the piece of toast with the butter on it. And then maybe you can upgrade to like an egg. But don't go ahead and start trying to go into like searing lamb or anything like that. So it's like, you don't start there, dude.
No, you don't.
And if you do, you're gonna screw up. And by the way, if you do it by trial and error, which by the way would cost you a lot of money and a lot of lamb, that's all you could do. You're stuck making lamb. But if you can learn the basics of cooking, it's like you can be thrown anywhere with any ingredients and throw something together. So I feel the same way about samples and stuff like that. It's like if you just put me in a room with like samples I've never heard, I'm sure I could still make something good.
And Gordon Ramsay will be in your kitchen before you even think about closing the blinds. If you start cooking lamb and you don't even know how to make a grilled cheese.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, there's no Gordon Ramsay of the electronic music scene, or is there?
Oh, God. Who would it be? Who's, like, pretty tough on everyone? I don't know. I feel like electronic music is pretty PC, and everyone is, like, just trying to be supportive because it's already a hard business.
Oversaturated.
It's oversaturated, so people just try to be supportive, but you don't see too many people, like, calling out other people on production,
Not really.
It's not really a thing, but definitely in the confines of their private spaces, you'll definitely hear some stuff. Mm-hmm. In the green rooms, in the LA houses, you'll hear it all.
Mm-hmm.
You'll hear it all.
You absolutely will.
Did you hear that guy? Did you hear his album? You hear the mix on that? How did that get released? Let alone on a label. Like, what the... That's when you'll hear that. Mm-hmm. But you won't hear that on Twitter. You'll hear, yes, queen, I love you.
Yeah.
So it is what it is, man. It's just like the time we live in. It's the culture we live in right now. It would be refreshing if there was a Gordon Ramsay or two that had great intention, but had tough love. So it's like it might actually benefit music as a whole if there was more critics.
I think sometimes when people, sometimes producers will kind of outstep their boundaries and start saying shit that they shouldn't, and then somebody will kind of put them in their place and they'll be attacked, which is kind of cool, but we don't really need that.
I don't know, man. I just, for the most part, with that level, that side of the industry of making a living off music, I just stay way the hell away from. I just make the music and I come out and I just try to do my part. I'm just trying to make my own personal dreams work, and anyone who wants to come along for the ride is so welcome if they're down for the ride.
I think that's how a lot of people have their mindset these days is, hey, I'm doing my own thing. You can follow me. I don't care what he says.
It's because either fresh blood has taught people that, corporations and stuff are not on your side. And people like me who've worked with labels and stuff like that, they're not on your side either, and they're failing. Like, people are making collectives these days, and people are also self-releasing more than ever. And people want that. And so that's the sort of shift that I've seen. And that's created exactly kind of what you said is like, I'm just doing my own thing. But at the same time, I know a lot of people who say they're just doing their own thing, but they're literally copying other people note by note. So I'm like, oh, are you?
Are you? Sure sounds a lot like this person.
Are you really in your own lane, boss? I'm in my own lane. Y'all ain't ready yet. Big things coming soon. And you're like, all right, yeah, okay.
Okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
When you're writing the music, do you have kind of like a go-to plugin that you use? Do you have a go-to like sample pack that you really like or that you've kind of discovered that like I can really transform this into whatever I want? I can throw whatever I want on it.
No, man. I mean, like, if you get stuck on a sample pack or even a sample library where you have control over the notes, like orchestral stuff and, virtual instruments kind of stuff, if you get stuck with one and you think like that's your sound, like there's a difference between having a sound and literally just having a sound. As soon as that sound gets tired, like people deem it like tired and they're over it, you're done. That's the end of your like career if you don't continue to evolve and diversify. So for me, my go-to is not a plugin. It's not a sample pack. My go-to is what is happening right now, because I like to keep my finger, my thumb on the pulse of what's happening in music, whether I like it or not. What's happening now, and is there anything cool that I can draw inspiration from? What have I been listening to lately? What can I draw inspiration from there? So it's more like ideas that I rely on rather than things. And I think that's a lot. That's why I've survived every wave of EDM. That's why I survived a hiatus, even though like that's basically career suicide in the entertainment industry. Because if you go away, no one will miss you. There's some guy who's going to come along and take your place and no one will notice that you ever left. And that was scary. That was really scary that no one noticed that I left until I came back.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like a full year, and people were like, hey, man, I heard you were like gone. I was like, yeah, I needed you. Like, my life was falling apart, and no one really came to my side. So I kind of quit because I was angry at everyone for not helping me in my time of need after helping so many people. Because I like to help. I like to help people, man. I mean, Dion Timmer and I, a few weeks ago, made a Discord server for people who suffer from like anxiety and mental illness, just to kind of talk, get things off their chests, because therapy's expensive and everyone's freaking anxious and depressed these days. It's hard times. And, so like that stuff comes naturally. It just was a big, huge gut punch to finally be the one to be like, hey guys, I need help. And no one came. This time around, I think people would come. We have a lot more, this next wave of like producers is a lot more understanding and I think a lot more compassionate, if I can kind of say that. Millennials are kind of up their own butts, myself included sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think that it's going back to your question, it's ideas that save me. It's ideas that, like, even on the way, like, driving here, I was just listening to Deftones, and I'm like, I can make this an amazing song. Like, I can flip this into an amazing remix. Or I was listening to Linkin Park the other night, and I was like, dude, I need more turntable scratches in my tracks. That shit's hot, and no one else is doing it, So I did.
They're very cheesy, but they're very cool.
They're not. They're not.
You don't think so?
Enough time has gone by where I'm like, enough time has gone by. I'm looking at my photographer right now. Enough time has gone by where I'm like, yeah, you know what? Limp Bizkit was onto something. Whereas like 10 years ago, it's like, oh God, Limp Bizkit, I swear, so bad, so cringy. Now it's like, I think they were trying to do something. So these days, getting closer and closer to 30, I find myself, of course, going back to my favorite, childhood sort of bands and gaining re-inspiration for them. So Korn, Linkin Park, Deftones, that kind of stuff. And then, obviously the metal that I got into has inspired a lot of what I've already done. It's pretty interesting to explore the sort of Y2K generation of rock and metal and industrial and bring it into 2019. It's very interesting results. So
I have not been my dad who's also a guest on the show a couple weeks ago. He is a vinyl record collector, and he's got probably 50, 60,000 records.
Christ.
So he is like a walking music library from 1940 to 2000s.
Yeah.
And he can, if you tell him, I like this song, he can tell you what label it was on, what side it was on the record, who was in the band at the time, who they were married to, how many kids they had, what their birthday is, where they lived. He knew all this weird information.
That's nuts.
It's nuts.
That's nuts.
But
at the same time, I'm kind of the same way with music and video games. It's just bizarre. It's just bizarre. And sometimes I have to kind of stop myself because I can feel the nerd coming out. And I don't mind being a nerd. I'm totally a nerd. I'm a proud weeb. I'm a proud dweeb, dork, whatever you want to call me. I'm happy to be that guy. However, if you start asking me questions about, what, Super Nintendo game came out, or Sega Genesis, or Sega Dreamcast, or any of these things, especially the Y2K era, I can, quote any movie from that era, whether it's Fight Club or American Beauty or whatever, which by the way, they all came out in the same year. 1999 was the best year, and I'm glad to have been alive for it. I may have only been 9 years old, but I remember it very clearly. So I just have been, it's interesting, again, the metal that I listened to in 2014 was the kind of metal I was emulating. The stuff that I'm doing now, I'm emulating my sort of childhood influences, which is coming up with totally different results, and it's great. So that sort of answers your question in the long form about, what plugin. It's not about plugins for me, man. It's about ideas.
Yeah, and that's kind of the answer I was looking for is where does everybody kind of draw their inspiration? I know everybody has different parts, and where they draw, some people go on a walk, some people eat, some people cook.
I have a very, very specific routine that I do every night that I'm home, and that is around 7:30, I smoke a bowl, and I get a really nice, comfy, indica high. So it's you're really chilled out and relaxed. And I put on a very specific jacket. It's really nice and cozy feeling on the inside, and I wrap myself up. And I put my headphones on, really expensive Razer headphones that have nice bass response and stuff. And dude, I just go down YouTube rabbit holes for 4 hours. And it's you would think that after producing music all day, the last thing I want to hear is music. And sure, there's some days where, especially lately, all I've been doing is playing Apex Legends besides making music. But it's it's such a cleansing ritual to be cozied up and just re-falling in love with music, because during the day I'm doing business with music, I'm talking to people I don't really like and trying to make money to pay the bills, and I'm trying hard and I'm working hard, but I love music. It hurts so good, kind of thing. It's the nightly routine that I have is where I draw so much inspiration, and I will go ham on Notepad, okay, just with ideas, and this, I found a very specific rabbit hole, and I'm not going to share it, but there's one video you can click, and every song that comes up next, how YouTube suggests and automatically plays, if you just let it roll for an hour or two, you'll go from this one song to new metal, so you get the whole Korn, you get the whole Disturbed kind of thing. And then that translates into like Blink-182 and My Chemical Romance and like that.
Wow.
And I'm like, yes, bring it. And then that sort of leads into 90s like Euro trance. I'm like, yes, bring it, which leads into like, it just keeps going. And I just love it. And I never get tired of it.
Wow.
Yeah. I know that I'm becoming older because I don't get tired of like the same track over and over again.
Yeah. So you found this kind of ritual.
Yeah.
That kind of works for you.
It just happened.
It just happened, and it's like you do so many kind of different things, but it works for you.
Oh God, I need it. It's like cleansing my soul. Just
Do you look forward to it, like when you wake up?
Oh God. Some days, I mean, like I haven't lately, especially since losing the project files. I got to hustle, especially since there was some client work that was lost. Dude, there's some days where I'll just take off because I'm like I'll wake up, I'll open up FL Studio, I'll look around, and I'll be like, I got nothing. I got nothing. So then I just allow myself, take a nature walk, complete silence, see what the girlfriend is up to kind of thing, and then if nothing is coming, I'm just going to play video games all day. I'll probably play RPGs during the day, and then when my boys get off work, we'll hop on Apex Legends or Rocket League or, whatever we're playing at the time. But I'll stretch the ritual out. I'll take myself out on dates and listen to the best music and take myself out to eat. And, I make like a whole day out of like self-care. And that way, I might find inspiration elsewhere. And that way, my brain gets a refresher. So maybe the thing that I was stuck on the next day, I'm like, nope, I know exactly what to do here, revisiting it. So it's extremely important. I see a lot of artists not doing it, and they burn out so fast. Or it takes them like a month to write one song. It's like, why? Why? You've been doing this for like 5 years. Why is it taking you 1 month to write a song?
KSHMR spent 3 years on his song Magic, which I love the song. I think the melody is beautiful. I think the choice of synths, but I'm like, who on earth would spend 3 years on a 2.5 minute song?
Well, if you like KSHMR, then just hang tight.
True.
Yeah, we've become a little bit close. Yeah, no, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say for now, because I don't like to be that big things soon kind of guy. No. Sometimes these things don't happen. Sometimes just life gets in the way, but I can say that, stems have been exchanged.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's exciting, because I'm a big fan of KSHMR.
Good.
So.
Good. No, it's fun. But you reminded me that before I leave, I have to definitely ping him. While it's fresh in my brain, I gotta like ping him, like, "Oh, what's up?" Mm-hmm. People go on tour, people have lives. Sometimes you just don't get to it.
Especially him, where he's crazy busy.
Oh my god, he's insanely busy.
Yeah, and he's running the label. And
it's an operation. Let's just say that it's just So
absolutely. So what are some other things that you do? Do you have like a morning routine? Do you have an evening routine? Do you have a morning routine?
I like to warm up my eyes and my ears, as I call it. So I warm up my eyes first. I don't like to listen to things first thing in the morning. I like the silence of the morning. I like the ritual. I eat very light in the morning, if anything. I'm very into like intermittent fasting. I think it's great for the body. Like my blood work I just had done, and it's better than when I was 20. And I'm turning 29, so it's like, hey, I'm doing something right. So I eat light in the morning, or not at all, or I'll grab a kombucha or something like that, and just look at art, because maybe I'll see something and be like, whoa, now that's cool, and I want to write something. I want to write music the way that image looks. And so it's like scoring. It's like reverse scoring. It's like I saw the image, and now it's inspiring me, versus like, writing music.
If this picture was audio, this is what it would sound like.
Precisely. So, I'll even go into like, it's desaturated, so I'm going to like roll off the high ends on some of my synths. It's super bright, so maybe I'll boost the high ends. It depends on the picture and what it makes me feel.
And how would you determine to boost? Like, oh, it's bright, I'm going to boost the synths. What about boosting the kick? or
Right.
you
I
know?
mean, well,
Is it just kind of whatever comes to mind?
it's whatever comes to mind, but it also is like a genre thing.
Okay.
So obviously, if I see like a really like cyberpunky type art that really moves me, I'm gonna obviously immediately have in my head to have hard kick and a clap with like a nice gate, just the Nine Inch Nails sort of feel, which is one of my biggest influences for sure. Yeah.
Cool.
That's down the rabbit hole eventually.
That's-
Oh yeah, you start getting into all my favorites. Bjork, you get to Nine Inch Nails. It just like starts to go back. I'm like, yes, keep going, keep going. This one ritual playlist.
So after these rituals, you've warmed up your eyes, you've warmed up your ears.
Oh yes.
Everything, you're ready to kind of start the day. This is kind of different than the question, but do you have like a particular moment or a ritual where you were really inspired and you wrote a song that led to kind of your favorite production? Or do you have a favorite release that you've done so far, or do they all kind of come together? I know this is a very hard question for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too hard. I mean, in terms of like songs I've created that I'm super proud of.
I guess it could be anything. Like you just really like the way that's mixed, or you just really like that melody, or
here's the thing, man. It's like, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like to listen to music from my past. I love it. I love my music, and in a non-egoic way. What I mean by I love my music is I'm not saying I'm so good at music. Hark, here are my works. Look upon them. No. I like my music because during stuff like Valkyrie 1 through 3 and Whispers in the Mist and Ghost Spores and basically all of the Ancient and the Arcane, when I was making that music, I felt like I wanted to hear it out there because it wasn't out there, I wanted to hear what these, like I had these ideas like, man, this would make a great song. Why has no one done this yet? I'm going to do it, like it gets like me going that it hasn't been done yet. So, I think back to a lot of my works, and I'm extremely proud of most of anything after 2014 when I feel like my production really started to get glued together. I'm just glad that they exist in the world because I'm sure there's people like me who are glad that Valkyrie exists. It just hit. I did like a mashup of all three as like one giant 15-minute long progressive metal song, and it just hit 1 million plays on my personal YouTube, which is mostly inactive account. So that's saying something. That people are finding it in the algorithm and enjoying it. People want to hear that music too. People want to hear Whispers in the Mist. People want to hear like Ghost Spores. Like, what would it sound like if bluegrass with like an 808 under it? I want to hear that now. Well, guess what? It exists.
Somewhere.
It exists, and it's called Ghost Spores by Varien, and it's off the album The Ancient and the Arcane, the last track. So that's ultimately I'm very proud of my works. There's a lot that I've released so much music as Varien. There's a lot that I'm not proud of, whether it was due to label pressure or early productions or I rushed something because of, some reason or other. But for the most part, I think I crushed 2018. Looking back, coming from zero, the self-releases that I did, like Monarch Butterfly, I think that's a good song. Like in the realm of industrial, which is kind of where I am mentally, like Claws was,
Claws.
Claws is like, that's the cleanest mix I think I've ever done. And it's pure negative space. So I believe that the notes that aren't there are just as important as the notes that are there. And therefore, if they're as important as the notes that are there, that makes them sort of like ghosts, like shells of a note. So you should treat those moments as if they were, full of melody and notes and stuff like that. And that's what really made the songs like Tiva 833 and Claws successful, is because when it hits, really all you're getting is like a really sparse techno type drop, but it's not techno. It's still full of something. Mm-hmm. It's like what is it? And that ephemeral something is something that I try to channel into all my tracks these days. So
Yeah.
it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun.
So how do you go about naming your tracks? Is that
So-
do you have a specific convention for that?
Yeah, I mean, like, I read a lot. I watch a lot of videos. I like to stay, as we were talking before the podcast, I like to stay educated, stay learning, full-time student still, like just in life. And I just come across cool words or cool phrases, or maybe I'll be writing out like a stream of consciousness journal in like one stream of words. It's like, that's it. And it's funny because you'll get words like, you'll get songs of mine like Claws, Valkyrie. But then you'll get one like, Death Asked a Question, or like you'll get like 5-word titles, and people are like, really? And I'm like, man, if you could only see the metalcore scene. They have like entire like book titles, and the grindcore scene is like even worse. It's like entire sentences as their song titles. It comes from anywhere. It's just whatever sounds good and whatever fits the vibe. Like, because when you're a listener, and this goes out to all the producers out there, I hope you are writing this down, because this is a great lesson that I've learned, is that as a listener and as a producer, what you should be like, what happens is like, when you go to SoundCloud, okay, let's just assume we're going to SoundCloud, and you see a song titled a certain way, and there's a picture a certain way, you already have a bias of what it's going to sound like,
True.
Like if there's a song called like Summer Hotness, or Jesus Christ.
Summer Heat.
Just summer vibes.
Summer vibes.
Whatever. Summertime vibes. That's going to be different than a track called like, my friend Hades has a song called Fuck My Nose Up. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, there's definitely, like, I have an idea of what that's going to sound like. And the art is like, drives it even like, yep, that's what I thought it would sound like. So, definitely with song titles, don't take it lightly. You're creating a bias for people who are about to jump into it.
Mm-hmm. That's a good tip.
It's a very good tip.
It's a very good tip.
Yeah. Shout out to Fiji Ouija, who sort of drove that into me, like when we were working on the song We Are the Lights. I knew that like instinctively, but when he was able to articulate it to me, I'm like, let's go. I gotta spread the gospel about this.
Yeah, that's a really good tip, because when I write music, or when I used to do it like a lot, when I had a lot of time to do it, that was the hardest thing I had. Was, like,
Oh no,
finding a title.
it's extremely hard. That's why when you see a cool word, like in the library when you were checking in, I mean, you probably saw me looking around. I was actually looking at the titles of books.
This building is so beautiful too.
Oh, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous, but like in terms of song titles, I was looking at book covers, and I like words, I like language a lot, so I just am constantly surrounding myself with words, and anytime there's a cool one, I make a voice memo, or I have a notepad, and then I have an email sent to myself from like a couple years ago, like, here's a bunch of cool words, future me.
Do you have do you create voice memos, like when you hear a memo or like a melody in your head, you kind of record something?
The past 6 months, yeah.
Yep.
100%.
I need to start doing that.
100%. It's completely like kept me so that I don't have to worry about remembering something. It's pretty incredible the difference it can make, because if you're struck by like an idea lightning bolt, like how are you going to get that down if you're not near a computer for the next day, or even the next couple hours? You might lose it. Just like, when people ask about like my songwriting process, it's like, all right, imagine you had a dream and you remember everything from the dream, but you want to write it down, because you know that the more that you write down, the more that you wake up, the less you're going to remember from the dream. That's how my song ideas work. I'll get struck with major inspiration, and I have to get it down now or never. And so that's why most of my skeletons, like of the tracks or full tracks even, are done 3 to 6 hours, is because I'm sort of fighting against my brain to just like put down the dream, and then I can come back to it and flesh it out and put,
Create the skeleton.
Meat on the bones, and
Put
then
meat on the bones.
then we got a baby.
Mm-hmm. There you go. That's basically it. What about like creating the art? Do you create the artwork yourself as well, or is that?
No, I always try to work with like artists that are trying something different. So last year I worked with Kiki, Dead Pixel, shout out. Love her to death. She's amazing. This year with Varien, I am trying a new sort of aesthetic that's sort of a continuation of a thought of like last year and like the Chainsmokers remix I did and stuff like that. Just more melodic stuff. Very heavily like anime influenced. I just posted some art for this Bring Me the Horizon cover I'm putting out. That's the general direction, but I mean, I always look for artists that are maybe on the outskirts. Maybe I feel like a connection to them because I feel like on the outskirts too, and not like in a bad way, but just we think differently. I'm not gonna be putting a picture of a really hot babe, like a real life babe on my art, and I'm like, that's so low hanging fruit, like normie trash. Like, come on.
It's like
dude.
when I see like those like 2-hour techno remakes with, and then you see this beach
and
babe on
thumbnails, man.
Like, you couldn't have come up with anything better. Seriously.
God. Or you just see like one thing that's been driving me nuts is like all the feature-based releases that just have abstract geometric shapes with a white background. I'm like, are we still in 2016, bro? Like you haven't evolved that art style anymore? Like, okay, I probably sound like an elitist right now. I just want to see cool things happening out there. And sometimes I do. I mean, there's a lot of really good stuff happening right now. But of course, I still see stuff that I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's
why?
funny because I have a song that I kind of deleted that I wasn't too proud of because I'm like, that was like fun to do. And I listened to it the other day and I'm like, I kind of like what I did with that. Mm-hmm. Like, I really like the kick sample I used. But somebody had messaged me when it was on my YouTube channel, like, hey, I just started a YouTube channel. I really like the song. Can I share it? And he had a stupid picture of a beach babe that he uploaded with it. And I'm like,
low-hanging fruit, man. They
really is.
They want the clicks.
It really is.
They want that AdSense money if they can even get that these days.
Yeah.
YouTube's so strict. But
YouTube is getting very strict. So how do you find these artists that you work with? Do you just search them on Instagram?
No, I just like, I'm on like, the depths of Instagram and Twitter, just like searching and looking at fellow artists and like, man, who did your art? Or like usually they're tagged. Mm-hmm. So I knew about Oscar, who is doing my art right now. I've known about him for about half a year, maybe more. And I always loved his style. And the fact that he was able to incorporate my aesthetic with his style blew me away.
Yeah.
Blew me away.
Cool. Let's talk about your languages and how all that kind of flows in and is very inspirational to you.
Sure. I mean, language has always been interesting to me. When I was growing up, I used to have a really hard time talking to people. Like not talking to them, but listening, because all I would hear is the pitch of their voice. I've always had, I hate the term, but perfect pitch. It's also known as absolute pitch. Basically, you play an A on a piano, I can tell you it's an A. And, 14 years into it, I can spell out most chord progressions if they're not crazy and made by John Coltrane or Jacob Collier. But to this day, it took a lot of time in my childhood. But to this day, and you can ask any of my friends this, I have to watch movies with subtitles on because I just hear da 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 da. When people talk, I hear rhythm and I hear pitch and I hear music in people's voice. So that's what drew me to language. My major in college, after I decided chemistry was way too hard, was like linguistic anthropology. And then I got into a bunch of weird other stuff and ended up doing like physical therapy with the focus on massage therapy. It's kind of a strange skill set I have, but language has always enthralled me, and so I tried to study Japanese when I was like 18, but I didn't have enough discipline for it, and finally, like 4 years ago, I picked it up and haven't stopped. I'm a little bit rusty speaking because Japan is an island, and there's not many Japanese speakers outside of that island. So I do Skype lessons when I study, and I speak with an actual Japanese person. But I've been doing that for about 4 years, and I feel comfortable reading and speaking conversationally with Japanese people. Again, I've had to learn a lot with, working in K-pop, just learning a little bit, just to, be involved in conversations and stuff like that. Puts you in a better position of power. Working with Indians on certain projects, you learn a little bit of like just basic, there's so many dialects, but like Bengali and stuff like that. It's just, you learn a little bit here, a little bit there, just to do business. So, and then now I'm learning Russian. So language, it's pretty interesting because when I'm talking with a Japanese person in Japanese, I'm in Japan mode, my mind switches personalities a little bit. And that's actually, there's a scientific term for it, but it's basically, again, when you speak outside of your native language, it's like your perspective shifts too, because you have to think about their language. So for instance, like Japanese is a very polite language and not inconveniencing anyone. So in English, I'm very not PC, I'm very like, bleh, I'll just say it kind of thing. Tactfully, but I'll say it. In Japanese, if I want, I'll probably not say it, or if I need to say something, I will find some beautiful way to wrap it up in a present and give it to someone. It's a very specific type of language, and I'm happy to do that in that mode. But in English, I'm like, I wish I could just say this fucking thing. Just get it over with. But in Japanese, I'll be like, どうでしょうか? And it's like very nice and like, what do you think? But I like it. It's interesting. I can't report on Russian yet. I'm not that deep into it, but I imagine that also has its own personality. But and it ties into music. I mean, it's all sound and sound design and sound like exploration. All of this, language has a part in. That's why we're attracted to vocals. That's why vocal chops are accepted in today's societies. Like, it's still like the human spirit is still there somewhere. So it's always like inspired me. So
cool. And so we have to hear a little bit of Japanese now. Tell us like a little short story.
Oh, God.
Or you can tell us about your drive here.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
You don't have to if you don't want to.
You put me on the spot, man, on a podcast, bro. Well, it's interesting because I've been studying since I haven't had access to my teacher recently. She moved back to Japan, and our time zones are so off. I've been studying pitch accent.
Okay.
So instead of saying, like introducing myself, so instead of saying "Watashi wa Niku desu, yoroshiku onegai shimasu," it's like, so that means, hi, my name is Nick. It's like, nice to meet you kind of thing. There's that. That's the English version with the English like accent, and then there's "Watashi wa Niku desu, yoroshiku onegai excuse me, yoroshiku onegai shimasu." It's like you get that extra flavor. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. You like have to put certain accents on things, go up on certain words, down on certain words. It's very specific. Like if I wanted to say like I'm a student, it's like watashi wa gakusei desu. It's like that's exactly how you're supposed to say it textbook wise. Now I used to play games with this crew of Japanese people, and it'd just be like, "Omae wa teme wa nani o sunda?" And it's just so trashy sounding, and people are like, "Man, Japanese is such an angry language." It's like, you should hear English when we were like, "Yeah, let's go, yeah, man. No, we sound just as dumb.
Yeah.
So it was fun. I miss them.
It's kind of a person by person thing too.
Shout out to Taro. I miss him. Taro, he's awesome.
So that's awesome. I know we had the room booked for about 15 minutes.
Okay.
So let's kind of
business
side.
Business, hit me.
So you are working. Do you have like another full-time job, or is music full-time your only thing?
Music has been my full-time job since 2013.
That's awesome. Congrats.
Thank you.
I think a lot of people aspire to do that and make it kind of their goal so they
Thank
can
you.
focus full-time on music.
Thank you.
So how did you get to that point? And do you have somebody kind of working your business transactions, or is everything kind of your own? What kind of advice do you have could you give somebody like me who's potentially looking to do that, get to that point?
What worked for me was just like getting involved in everyone's business. And I mean that, like, getting involved in the conversations on social media, but also like just finding entrepreneurial moments where it's like, I can do that. And I'm going to hit them up right now, and I can pitch myself to them and prove myself to them. And just things just started to, like, I don't know, compound. I definitely had a lot of stuff in the back end. So I started off making sample libraries for this company, 8DO. And then that sort of led to composing trailer music. And that sort of led to composing for Hollywood movies. Like, you see that transition, but that's like one thing on the back end. So my philosophy is to have like at least 5 to 10, Easter egg baskets, so that if one falls through, it's like, okay, I'll just find another one to fill that one, but I'm not in any danger, And it's been hard, like coming back from a hiatus. There's a lot of people who, there was a lot of like mistrust for a lot of months when I came back. Don't work with him, he's going to ghost again, kind of thing. But I mean, I've more than proven myself to kind of combat that. I would definitely tell anyone who has been through this or who hears murmurs like that, just ignore it, just keep going, prove them wrong. Because the same people last year who called my comeback cute and didn't think I'd hear about it, I heard about it. Now they're like, Varien's always been good. What a champ. Mental illness, we need to have that discussion right now. And it's like, I see you. Don't think I didn't see you. Just ignore them. Just keep going. Keep finding ways to like diversify your skill set. So, for instance, like I can do anything from mixing to sound design to sound effects. I've done sample libraries, K-pop, J-pop. I have a song coming out with Curly this Friday that's like American pop. Just every genre under the sun. Just be prepared. I'm a very prepared person. It's part of my having an anxiety disorder is making sure that you have control over as much as you realistically can. So I try to make sure that I'm prepared, and being prepared financially and being prepared business-wise. Like, what do I have set up for this month? Nothing? Okay, well, I got to drum up something. What am I going to drum? Get smart. Well, how do I get smart? What are you good at? Oh, I can do this. Well, make a business out of it and start pitching yourself to anyone and everyone. And don't be annoying, but be persistent. And there's a good line, and you'll figure it out. You'll be annoying at first, but you'll figure out persistence. And people respect that. People respect a good, genuine hustle. And people will pay a fine dollar for a genuine hustle. And as far as marketing and networking and stuff like that, these days it's all about, again, just joining the conversation. Follow the people that inspire you. Get into the industries that you want to get into. Follow them on Twitter. Follow them on Instagram. Anytime they post something, like, favorite, whatever, comment, get involved. Because I can even tell you, as someone who doesn't spend a lot of time on Twitter or social media, or tries not to at least, if I see someone's name come up enough, I click on their profile. And if there's music like pinned to the top of their profile, I'm going to listen to it. because that might be a really cool producer. Or if I see that, they've got like a cool look and a cool like looking bio, I might be like, all right, I'll keep my eye on you. And I can tell you that people way, way more famous have done the exact same thing to me. And that's where I've gotten a lot of my good opportunities, like, making a interlude for Snails, or doing even the Skrillex orchestral suite from 2011,
That was beautiful, by the way.
Yeah, but that was me. Thank you. That was me persistently messaging Skrillex's manager saying, I'm taking dubstep songs and making them orchestral. It's a fun, weird idea. And then 7 months later, he's like, hey, so Sonny's going to call you. I'm like, Sonny? That's this guy. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God, Skrillex?
The Skrillex?
And so, yeah, he just called me and said, what do you need to like make a really good orchestral cover? And this was at a time when I couldn't afford, contact Native Instruments, contact libraries. So he, in exchange for, a good starting point with sample libraries, I was able to create that song. And it's my splice packs. People hear about my names. Like, you just got to think about things. Like, again, splice packs, it's like, I can make sounds. Can I make 100 sounds and then reach out to Splice and see if they want to release it and make money off that, royalties? You just got to get smart with what you know. And if you don't know it, learn it. There's so many resources out there. It's like I've taught everything myself at this point. With production, yes, I've gotten tips from friends. Yes, I've learned stuff on YouTube. But 99% of it has been me just poking around and learning how to make a business out of it. You just got to have an entrepreneurial spirit. And if you feel like you don't, get a damn good manager and just create. So
that's what I did with FL Studios. I played around with the demo, and I just said, to hell with it. And I bought it, and I'm like, I spent $200 on this. Now I have to figure it out.
Yeah.
So I just kind of forced myself and taught myself everything. I had a pretty good understanding of like music theory because I'd taken piano lessons and everything. So I could understand that side of everything.
Right.
But I had to learn FL Studio.
Right.
And I like how you mentioned you just kind of figure it out. Yeah. And when you had that phone call with Sonny or Skrillex, you were kind of prepared for it. You kind of were anticipating, you knew what you needed and everything. And when this episode's out, it'll be last week's episode with that guest, Miss Maria Dion. She was talking about clarity. And she wrote this song when she was in school, just kind of messing around with a friend, with a producer. She loved to write music. And she wrote it, and it hit the desk of Clive Davis.
Oh, Jesus
And it hit the desk of Jay-Z. And and it hit the desk of some big radio DJ up in New York. Yeah. And she's like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, she was
that.
getting contacted by like Jay-Z's team, and she jumped on a phone call and she couldn't answer those questions. She had no idea what to say.
Wow.
So she's like, that was a lost opportunity because I didn't have clarity. I didn't know what I was doing. So with you jumping on that phone call with Sonny, you knew what you needed, you knew what you wanted, and you knew everything. You were clarified.
If I can't see the vision right away, I just trust that when the opportunity is presented to me, that I'll just improvise in that moment with what I think I need, and whatever I get, I'll just work with it. Like, and in terms of like the K-pop stuff, I mean, that's kind of like the same story, but it has a happier ending. It's just like I made this huge catalog of K-pop tracks, and then all of a sudden, bam, these guys, Vix, want it. And I'm like, yeah, I know them. They're huge. They're like in the top 10, most famous K-pop groups as far as the boys' side. And they're like, they like your song. And then 2 weeks later, it's like, they love your song. They're recording to it now. And then it was like, all of a sudden, it was like, they're going to take your song. Awesome. And they're taking the instrumental. Awesome. So that's double the royalties. And your song's going to be the lead single with a music video. And it's coming out in 2 weeks. What? But I couldn't do that on the phone. I'd be like, okay, I understand. And what are the dates again? You know, like you have to put on a game face and be prepared, or else, like again, the opportunities that are thrown at you, they're just gonna hit you in the face, and you're gonna get knocked out, and you're gonna be like, "What happened? Where's my opportunity?" You got to have your catcher's mitt ready. So
that's a good analogy.
Why not?
Have your catcher's analogy.
Yeah.
Cool. So we got to leave the room here in a couple minutes.
Yep.
So let's kind of wrap everything up.
Sure.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Hey man, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I've been a big fan of yours for many years. So.
I've been a fan of yours ever since I looked you up on your site.
Which was what, a month or a week?
Yeah.
Cool. So how can people kind of follow you, keep up with you?
Sure. So, I mean, because of my hiatus, some people took my social names, believe it or not. So some of it's Varian Official, some of it's Varian Dark Boy. But I mainly am on Twitter and Instagram. That's where you're going to find the most up-to-date stuff. And both of those are Varian, so that's Varien, Dark, as in D-A-R-K, and then Boy, B-O-I. So Varian Dark Boy. And yeah, I post a lot and I share a lot of just various stuff. So it's a cool place to come hang out and chat. And I usually reply. I like to take time and talk to people. So
cool. And I will put all of your links in the show notes as well, so people can easily click and follow.
Thank you.
So thanks again for being on the show. Really appreciate it. And I wish you nothing but success in the coming future.
God bless. Thank you.
I'm still coming down off of the high that I had during that conversation. I was slightly starstruck when I went in that episode and I first met Nick, just because I've been a fan of his for so many years. But then after we got talking, we had a conversation. We shared a lot of similar things. We have similar interests about music and passions for the industry. So we kind of opened up and I had a great conversation, and I'm so excited that Nick contributed so much information about the music industry, about production, about his inspirations, and even about kind of the importance of mental health and taking that break, because it's so important for ourselves. We all get so worked up. We all get so caught up in so many different things, with work, with school, with family, with the kids, with whatever it may be. And we always forget to take time for ourselves. But Nick kind of realized that passion. He realized that he needed that mental break to kind of come back full force. And that hiatus seemed to do him very well. And now he's ready to come back full force and take it at the reins, I guess you could say. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I will put all of Nick's links in the show notes, as well as some of the things that he's talked about in other works, so that you can check out his work and make sure you keep up with him. Lastly, I want to make sure that you sign up to my mailing list, as it helps me notify you when new episodes are live. And there's also a Patreon, so you can support this show and potentially work with me with the various tiers and services that I would like to offer to you. I would also appreciate a 5-star rating in Apple Podcasts, or a review in the other podcast platform that you choose to listen to your shows on, as it greatly helps the show get discovered and boost the show, I guess. There is a guest request form in the show notes as well. So if you or somebody you know would be a good guest for the show, please fill it out or send it over to them and have them fill it out. And I will reach out if the guest or you are a good fit for the show, so we can have a conversation similar to this one. Thanks again for tuning into this week's episode of When Life Hands You Lemons. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Nick, aka Varian, and we will see you next week on When Life Hands You Lemons.